My sister invited me to her engagement dinner, then uninvited me because her fiancé didn't like my job. So I canceled the restaurant booking. They found out when 30 people showed up to nothing. Thank you for being here with me today. I hope you're having a peaceful day, wherever you're watching from. If you've ever been pushed aside by people who claim to love you, especially over something as shallow as your status or career, I'd love for you to share your story in the comments. Let me know where you're watching from. 2. There's something comforting in realizing how many of us are quietly walking through similar storms. My name is Nate. I'm 33, a line cook at a neighborhood diner just outside of Milwaukee. I don't wear a suit to work, and I don't drive anything fancy. Most days, I come home smelling like bacon grease and burnt toast. And if I'm lucky, with enough energy to shower and heat up leftovers before bed. It's not glamorous, but it's honest work. I've never missed a shift, never left a coworker hanging. I take pride in that even if no one else seems to notice. In my family, I've always been the helpful one, not the golden child, not the gifted one, not the social centerpiece, just the one who shows up early to set up chairs, stays late to stack them, and somehow ends up footing the bill when things go sideways. I'm the one who knows where the extension cords are, the one who gets asked to grab a few extra things on the way to the party, the one who remembers everyone's coffee order, even when they don't remember my birthday. So when my sister, Madison, asked if I could help organize her engagement dinner, find a venue, handle the booking, maybe talk to the staff about menu tweaks, I said yes, no hesitation, because for a moment, I thought maybe, finally, I was being invited as more than the background help. Maybe this time, I'd have a seat at the table. I didn't know that 3 days before the event, I'd get a message that would remind me exactly where I stood. Growing up, I learned early that in our family, visibility came with conditions. If you were loud, impressive, camera-ready, people noticed you. If you were quiet, consistent, and useful, you were appreciated, but only in passing. Madison, my younger sister by 3 years, has always been the former. Blonde, bubbly, always surrounded by friends and stories and reasons to be celebrated. She got the solo in the holiday concert, the lead in the school play, the spotlight at every family dinner. I didn't mind, not at first. I was the kid who didn't complain, who helped clean up while everyone else took selfies, who held mom's purse during award ceremonies and drove grandma home afterward. I knew where the jumper cables were. I knew which uncles hated onions and which cousins always forgot their toothbrushes when they stayed over. I wasn't impressive, but I was reliable. And that, I thought, had to count for something. But it didn't get me in the photos. At birthdays, I was often the one holding the camera. At Thanksgiving, I was carving the turkey in the kitchen while the others went around the table listing what they were grateful for, my name rarely mentioned. Even though I'd picked up the pies that morning and spent half the afternoon reheating side dishes that someone else forgot to prep. When Madison graduated college, I bought her first grown-up handbag and quietly covered the bar tab for her friends at the after-party. When she got her first apartment and realized rent was higher than she expected, I helped with her security deposit. She said, "I'll pay you back." I didn't push, because I didn't do those things to be recognized. I did them because that's who I thought I was supposed to be, the guy who held it all together, while other people got to sparkle. And honestly, I convinced myself I was okay with that it was enough to be needed. Even if I wasn't really seen, but every once in a while, it stung when Mom would send out group texts with updates and forget to include me. When they took a sibling's photo on Mother's Day and told me I could snap it for them. When Madison got engaged and posted a carousel of everyone who made this moment special and I wasn't in a single frame, even though I was the one who'd picked her up from the airport the day before, brought snacks to the hotel, and helped Brian find a jeweler that could resize the ring overnight. Still, I said nothing. I smiled. I told myself it wasn't intentional, that I wasn't doing these things for credit anyway. But the truth was, some small, buried part of me wanted to be more than a utility. I wanted to be wanted. Not for what I could do, but simply because I mattered. So when she asked me to help book the engagement dinner, when she sent me a voice note with actual excitement in her voice, I felt something I hadn't in years. I felt included. I felt chosen. I felt like maybe this time things would be different. Madison has always been magnetic. Even when we were kids, she knew how to draw people in. She was the type who could break a dish and get a pat on the head. While I got grounded for forgetting to take out the trash, teachers adored her. Family friends sent her birthday cards with money in them. She had a way of making you feel like you were part of something special just by being in her orbit. And I was just sort of there, the older brother who gave rides, ran errands, and stepped aside so she could shine. I never resented her for that. Not really. It wasn't like she asked to be the golden child, but the family leaned into it hard. Mom in particular, she used to say things like, "Madison's our little light," or "that girl's going places." She meant it as praise, I'm sure, but when you hear that enough times, you start to understand what's being left unsaid. If she's the light, what does that make me? When Madison started dating Brian, the tone of everything shifted. Brian was polished, crisp dress shirts, leather loafers, a smile that looked like it had been trained in a mirror. He was a corporate attorney, came from a family that vacationed in the Alps and referred to dinner as supper. From the first time he shook my hand, I could feel it, that subtle up-down glance, the soft smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He asked me where I worked, and when I said I was a line cook, he said, "Oh, that's honest work," like it was a compliment and an insult rolled into one. My mom adored him. She kept using words like respectable and driven, like she'd been waiting her whole life for someone who could raise our family's social currency. At dinner one night, she leaned in and whispered, "Can you believe someone like that is marrying our Maddie?" Like Madison had scored a lottery ticket. Like this wasn't about love, it was about optics. I noticed that after Brian entered the picture, Madison started curating everything. Her Instagram became a portfolio of white linens, minimalist brunches, coordinated outfits. She unfollowed a bunch of old friends and started reposting wedding inspiration boards with titles like class, not flash, and tastefully timeless. It was like she'd been given a new mold to fit, and she was eager to pour herself right into it. And I didn't fit. Not with my food-stained apron, or my 20AF boots, or my second-hand car. I didn't look like the rest of their filtered world. I didn't photograph well under their definition of refinement. Still, I thought I could be part of it. That maybe, just maybe, the dinner I was helping plan wasn't about impressing Brian's family. It was about celebrating Madison, about connection, about love. I told myself that no matter how curated everything seemed, the core of it would still be family, but somewhere between the embossed invitations and the floral arrangements that cost more than my monthly rent, I started to feel the undertone, like I was being asked to hide behind the curtain again, to make everything work while staying out of the frame. And I was still okay with that. Almost. Until I realized that this time, I wasn't just being kept in the background. I was being erased entirely. When Madison called me about the engagement dinner, her voice had that practiced kind of excitement, like she'd been rehearsing how to sound grateful without sounding like she needed anything. "Hey, so we were wondering, would you be able to help us with the dinner setup? I mean, restaurants. Right. You're so good at that stuff." And I laughed. Because of course I said yes. It wasn't even a question. Of course I'd help. I always help. She needed a venue, something elegant but not ostentatious, cozy but upscale, somewhere that looked good in photos, but didn't cost more than the down payment Brian had just made on their future condo. I knew a place. An Italian restaurant downtown, family-owned like the diner I work at, run by people who cared about details and flavor and quiet dignity. I'd eaten there on my own more than once after long shifts, tucked into the corner booth with a book and a glass of Chianti. I knew the manager. I trusted the chef. So I called, secured the private room for 30 guests, talked through the menu, and paid the deposit on the spot because Madison said Brian was dealing with some banking stuff, and she'd Venmo me next week. They never did. I picked out the table linens. I arranged for a short toast schedule. I confirmed the wine pairings. I even suggested a signature cocktail based on Madison's favorite summer drink from a beach trip 5 years ago, a detail she had completely forgotten until I reminded her. She laughed and called me thoughtful. That felt good. Not extraordinary. Not game-changing, but enough to carry me through the next several days of logistics and minor chaos. Because for once, It felt like I wasn't just putting out fires. I was part of something that would be remembered. Something I could point to and say, I helped make that happen. Brian never thanked me. He'd send brief texts like sounds good or cool whenever I updated him about reservations or head counts, but never once asked how things were going or offered to take anything off my plate. He acted like I was a wedding planner they'd reluctantly hired, not someone who grew up sharing bunk beds and boxed macaroni with Madison every summer while the AC broke. But I brushed that off too. I figured some people just weren't expressive. Some people were awkward. I didn't want to make assumptions, so I kept going. I confirmed guest names. I requested the custom cake inscription Madison wanted. I sent her a mock-up of the printed menus and made changes at 11:30 p.m. when she decided the font looked a little too quirky. I even arranged a surprise slideshow of childhood photos to be played quietly on the wall behind them during dessert. And when Madison saw the sample file, she texted back, OMG, that's so cute. This is why I love you. I should have seen the shift coming. I should have paid attention to the silence from Brian. The way Mom kept saying things like, we want this to be really classy, or this crowd's a little different than what we're used to. I should have realized I was building something I wouldn't be allowed to enter. But I didn't, because somewhere deep down, I still believed that effort meant belonging, that showing up early and staying late could buy me a place at the table, that maybe just maybe being needed was the same as being wanted. 3 days before the dinner, at exactly 9:30 p.m., my phone lit up with a message from Madison. I was sitting on the floor of my apartment at the time, going through old photos to finalize the slideshow I had put together, trying to decide whether to include that picture from our road trip to Denver when we were kids, the one where she's eating an ice cream cone with her hair tied up in 2 crooked ponytails, and I'm in the background, holding up a peace sign with chocolate on my shirt. I'd just texted her, almost done. You want the baby pics in there too. Her reply wasn't what I expected. Hey, I've been thinking, and I just want to run something by you. Brian's parents are kind of particular. He mentioned your job the other day and said he's worried about how it might come off. Like, with the crowd that's coming. I totally get that your work is solid. It's just that this dinner is a bit more formal than we initially planned. So maybe it's better if you skip this one, just to avoid any weirdness. It's not personal. I promise. I read the message 3 times and still couldn't quite process it. Not personal. That's what she wrote. Not personal. As if asking me to erase myself from the very thing I'd built wasn't deeply personal. As if my job, my livelihood, something I had never once been ashamed of, was now an inconvenience to the image she was trying to sell. I didn't respond right away. I stared at the wall. I thought about the menu I'd finalized, the cake I'd paid for, the 30 names on the guest list that I'd confirmed one by one, the deposit receipt still sitting in my inbox. I thought about the slideshow she had called So Cute, the venue manager I had texted at midnight to move a table so the lighting would fall better on the head chairs. I thought about every small, invisible detail I had handled without being asked, and how none of it mattered now that I had become what? Embarrassing. Inconvenient. Too working class for her curated celebration. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. But I didn't ask her to explain. I didn't argue or plead or try to prove my worth, because deep down, I already knew this wasn't about the dinner. This was about the story she wanted to tell the people in the room. The narrative, the impression, the optics, and I didn't fit. I typed one message. Got it. No punctuation, no heat, just 2 words that held every ounce of swallowed pride I'd spent my adult life collecting. Then I put the phone down, turned off the slideshow, and sat in the dark with the glow of my laptop screen still casting photos of a childhood I thought we shared equally. In that moment, something shifted. Not suddenly, not violently, but like a drawer sliding closed that had been left ajar for too long. Not slammed, just finally shut. The next morning, I woke up early not because I had somewhere to be, but because I couldn't sleep. I made coffee, though I barely touched it, and sat by the kitchen window watching a pair of pigeons argue over a crust of bread on the fire escape. The city moved on as if nothing had happened, as if my sister hadn't just told me that my presence was incompatible with her celebration. I opened my laptop and pulled up the emails I'd exchanged with the restaurant manager. The reservation was under my name. The deposit had come from my card. The balance was due on the night of the event. I hovered over the thread for a while, rereading the last message she'd sent me just 2 days ago. "We're so excited. Nate, thank you for helping us make this perfect." I didn't reply to that one either. Instead, I called the restaurant. My contact, Elena, picked up on the second ring. "Hey, Nate," she said, cheerfully, finalizing numbers for Saturday. I paused, then said, as evenly as I could, "Actually, I need to cancel." She hesitated. "Cancel?" "Yes. I'm sorry for the short notice." She sounded surprised, but not annoyed. Just confused. "Okay, is everything all right?" "It will be," I said. "I'm just no longer involved." The cancellation policy was clear we were within the window. I'd lose a portion of the deposit, but the rest would be refunded. The private dining room would be reopened for new bookings. The staff that had been scheduled could be reassigned. She asked if I wanted to leave a note or redirect the contact to someone else. I said no. There was no one else. After we hung up, I canceled the floral order. I had arranged for 2 long centerpieces of soft whites and deep greens to match Madison's color scheme. I called the bakery and stopped the cake white almond with raspberry jam. Triple-tiered, their names in cursive gold on top. I reached out to the print shop and told them not to bother finishing the menus or place cards. I even called the local violinist I'd booked for a short acoustic set during dessert and told him the event was no longer happening. No one fought me. No one asked why, because to them, I wasn't a brother or a best man or a jilted guest. I was just the client, the name on the contract, the man behind the curtain, and quietly, I was stepping away from the curtain entirely. I didn't tell Madison. I didn't forward the confirmations or text her updates. I didn't rage or accuse or explain. I just stopped. Every plan she thought was in place. Every glass, every fork, every folded napkin and warm plate and soft-lit moment disappeared while she moved on with her curated countdown posts and matching robe photo shoots. I could have warned her, could have told her to prepare. But I didn't, because when someone tells you, with polished words and a smiling mask, that you are better left unseen, sometimes the most honest thing you can do is let them experience what absence really looks like. Saturday arrived like any other. Gray sky. Wind low but steady. I slept in for the first time in weeks. I didn't wake up with a checklist in my head. No confirmation calls. No last-minute errands. No backup plans. Just a quiet morning. My phone face down on the nightstand. My laptop closed. My hands still for once. Around 3 p.m. The text started. At first, just one, "Hey, where are you? Elena says you're not answering. Did we miss something?" From Madison. Then another, "The restaurant is locked. Nobody's here. What's going on?" From my mom. Then more one after another like popcorn bursting open. Guests arriving. Finding the doors shut. The lights off. The staff nowhere in sight. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of black coffee going cold in my hand, watching the messages build up like a slow-moving avalanche. 30 guests, all dressed up, all holding gifts and expectations and maybe a little pride, and not a single one of them had realized that the entire event had been built on the shoulders of someone they'd decided wasn't good enough to attend. One of my friends, who works a few blocks from the restaurant, texted me a photo later that night. It showed the sidewalk outside the venue, a cluster of people in cocktail attire standing under gray skies, some holding coats over their heads, others staring at their phones with confused, drawn brows. In the background, the front door was locked tight. The private event sign was gone. Inside, the lights were off. There were no waiters, no tables, no floral centerpieces, no cake, no clinking of glasses or violin music, just silence. And slowly, that silence turned into panic. At 4:02 p.m., Madison called me 5 times in a row. I didn't answer. At 4:09, Brian texted, "This is really immature. Nate, you could have told us." At 4:17, Mom sent, "What is happening? Where is everything?" And at 4:32, Madison sent me a single line. "Is this because of the text? I didn't reply to any of them, because it wasn't about the text. Not really. It was about everything that came before it, the years of being useful, but not included, appreciated but never valued, asked to serve but never to sit. That evening, I turned off my phone. I made myself dinner, nothing special. Just spaghetti with garlic and olive oil, and I sat on the couch with my feet up, watching the light change outside my window. Somewhere, I knew, they were scrambling, calling the venue, blaming the restaurant, whispering theories, making excuses, trying to repair the optics before Brian's parents noticed the cracks. But I wasn't part of that anymore. I didn't ruin the dinner. I didn't sabotage anything. I simply removed what I had provided and let the rest reveal itself. And in that stillness, with no apology offered, no apology demanded, I felt something settle in my chest, not triumph, not revenge. Just the weight of 10 years finally slipping off my back. That night, no one raised a toast. No one clinked glasses. No one took pictures worth posting. And for the first time, they might have noticed I was missing. The next morning, my phone buzzed again. I'd turned it back on out of habit, not curiosity. And within seconds, the notifications began flooding in. The panic had cooled into something more calculated, less frantic, more controlled. Madison's name appeared first. Look, I know you're upset. I shouldn't have said what I said. I was just trying to keep things smooth with Brian's family. You know how they are. No apology. No ownership. Just a redirection. A subtle framing that implied I had overreacted. They had been under pressure, and the whole mess was unfortunate but understandable. I didn't reply. A few minutes later, Mom called. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice was tight, strained in the transcript. Nate, I think we all need to take a breath. This didn't need to become a spectacle. You could have told someone. You didn't have to make a scene. That line stuck with me, make a scene. As if what happened had been a performance. As if removing the things I had built, paid for, organized, and held together was some calculated display of vengeance. Instead of a quiet return of dignity, I hadn't made a scene. I had made space. Space for the consequences they never thought would arrive. Then came Brian. His message was shorter, sharper. What you did was childish. You embarrassed Maddie. You embarrassed our families. Grow up. I read it once. Deleted it. Not because it hurt, because it proved everything I'd already known. That to him. I was never a person. I was a variable. A liability. Something to be managed. Removed. Kept outside the frame so his version of perfection could stand unchallenged. It wasn't the dinner he was mourning. It was the inconvenience of losing control. They didn't ask how I felt. They didn't ask why I did it. They didn't ask if I was okay. Because in their eyes, I wasn't someone who could feel slighted or excluded or exhausted. I was the guy who handled things. The one who showed up early, stayed late, and left quietly. That was my role. And when I didn't play it, the only thing they could feel was disruption. For a while, I considered replying. I even drafted a few responses long, composed, factual. Something to remind them of the money I'd spent, the hours I'd put in, the sheer weight of effort that had gone unnoticed. But I deleted every version before I sent it, because I realized I wasn't trying to be understood anymore. I wasn't trying to fix the story or rewrite the ending or plead for acknowledgement. I didn't need them to understand me. I needed me to understand what I would no longer accept. So I turned the phone off again, not in anger, not in protest, but in peace. For once, the silence wasn't theirs to give. It was mine to choose. I'd never written a family-wide email before. I'd seen them, sure, when cousins got engaged, when someone bought a new house, when an uncle needed help moving and sent out a blanket invitation hoping someone would bite. But I had never been the one to address everyone at once. I'd always stayed quiet, tucked into my lane, the helpful one who didn't cause waves. But now, I wasn't angry, I was clear. So I sat down, opened a blank email, and began typing. I wasn't going to accuse or rant. I wasn't going to dramatize. I just wanted to set the record straight before the version of the story they passed around at brunches and baby showers drifted too far from what had actually happened. Subject: just so you know what happened. I wrote, "Hi everyone. I wanted to share some clarity about this weekend's dinner, or lack of it, because I've been receiving messages and noticed a lot of confusion. 3 weeks ago, Madison asked me to help plan and book the engagement dinner. I secured the venue, handled the menu, paid the deposit, and managed most of the logistics. 3 days before the event, I received a message asking me not to attend due to concerns about how my job might reflect on the image being presented. Since the reservations and arrangements were made under my name and with my funds, I chose to cancel the event rather than continue supporting something I was no longer welcome to be part of. This wasn't sabotage. It wasn't a tantrum. It was a boundary set later than it should have been, but firmly. Then I attached a screenshot of Madison's message. Just one, no commentary, no editing. Just the sentence that had sliced through 10 years of quiet service in a single breath. Finally, I closed with, I'm not writing this to start a fight. I'm not asking for sides to be taken or apologies to be made. I just want the truth to be visible. Even if it's uncomfortable, I love my family. But I will no longer show up for events that only value what I can do, not who I am. If that makes me difficult or dramatic in your eyes, so be it. I'm not disappearing. I'm just done being invisible. I read it over once. Then again, I didn't add flourish or soften the edges. I didn't try to make it palatable. I wasn't writing for approval. I was writing for myself. Then I hit send. I turned off the computer and didn't check my inbox for hours. When I did, there were a few replies. A couple of cousins I hadn't heard from in months said, I had no idea. And respect. One even wrote, we should have said something years ago. I'm sorry. I didn't respond to most of them. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally realized I wasn't doing this for validation. I was doing it because I deserved to take up space in my own story. And if that meant walking away from roles I was never meant to carry, so be it. That night, I didn't eat anything fancy. I didn't try to recreate the menu I had once planned, or light candles to mimic the restaurant's ambiance. I didn't pour wine or play violin music or take a photo for Instagram. I didn't need to perform anymore. I just boiled pasta, tossed it in butter, garlic, and the last of a wedge of Parmesan I'd forgotten I had. I sat at my kitchen table with the lights low, my phone off. No distractions, no noise, just the soft hum of the refrigerator and the sound of my own breath, steady and calm for the first time in what felt like years. It wasn't much, no centerpiece, no plated elegance, no applause. But it was enough, because this time, no one was editing me out of the picture. No one was asking me to wear something neutral so I didn't clash with the aesthetic. No one was suggesting I stand off to the side so their fiancé didn't feel awkward. No one was telling me my presence would disrupt the harmony of their curated joy. It was just me, and for the first time, that didn't feel lonely. It felt real. I thought, briefly, about where they were. If Madison and Brian had found somewhere else to go, if their guests had scattered to nearby bars, quietly covering their confusion with polite laughter, if Mom was still trying to explain to our aunts what had really happened, I imagined them telling their version of the story, maybe saying I had a breakdown, or that there was a mix-up, or that the venue had failed to confirm. Maybe none of them said my name at all. And honestly, that was fine, because I wasn't trying to be part of the version they needed anymore. I wasn't trying to prove that I belonged. I wasn't holding out hope for some late-night apology or teary voicemail saying, we were wrong. Those kinds of endings belong in TV dramas. Not in real life. Real life is quieter, messier, and healing never comes all at once. It comes in tiny, deliberate choices like saying no, like telling the truth, like choosing not to show up when your worth is conditional. I didn't lose my family that week. I lost the illusion that they ever truly saw me as more than what I could provide. And in the space where guilt used to sit, something softer took its place. Not joy, not satisfaction, but peace. The kind of peace that comes when you stop trying to explain your value to people who were never willing to look. The kind of peace that tastes like buttered pasta and silence and your own name said kindly, even if only inside your own head. The kind that says, you were never too much. You were just never allowed to be whole. So I ate. I cleaned up. I poured myself a glass of water and stood at the window, looking out over the quiet street. A light snow had started to fall, soft and slow, settling on the pavement like a second chance. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I didn't feel responsible. I didn't feel small. I felt present. I felt complete. I felt free. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been the background character in your own family's story, and one day chose to walk away, leave a comment below. I'd love to hear how you reclaimed your peace. And if you'd like more stories like this about quiet strength, setting boundaries, and finding your voice in the middle of silence, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It truly helps the story reach someone who might need to hear it today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for seeing me. Until next time, take care of yourself.